um, that caused us not to be able to start on time. Let's get to the agenda. Item 2, public comment. At this time, we have members of the public desiring to address City Council for regard to matters on the agenda. Do we have anybody signed up? Okay. Okay, then item 2A, I'm sorry, item 3A, approval of action on the minutes. Everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting. Have any requests for a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve.
I have a request. Commissioner Brown, do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Second.
Okay. Second from Commissioner Smith, we can vote. Okay, well, mine did. Okay. Mine did work, so, okay, it's unanimous in favor, so the minutes pass. Next item is item 4A, public hearing. At this time, we will receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on a proposed rezoning of 2.586 acres from Imperial General Development Plan to Imperial Ballpark District Baxi Retail Plaza, final development plan for a commercial development located along Stadium Drive adjacent to the Imperial Ballpark Lofts. Who's presenting? I'm sorry. Brittany Zhao. Thank you.
So here we have a location map of the proposed FDP. As you can see, this arrow points out where it is located, and it is known as Imperial Ballpark District Tract B. Here we have a vicinity map. As you can see, it is located along Stadium Drive and south of Imperial. As stated before, this FDP is a proposed 2.586 acres located along Stadium Drive adjacent to the existing Imperial Ballpark lofts. This FDP is located within the existing First Step Imperial General Development Plan, or GDP, and the applicant is proposing a development of 3 one-story mixed-use retail, restaurant, or office buildings along with surface parking. Access to this FDP will be provided from Stadium Drive and Silent Manor, and this proposed FDP appears to align with the GDP. Here we have the proposed site layout plan. So you can see that access is provided here from Stadium Drive and from Silent Manor. And the applicant is proposing a long building on the south and 2 separate buildings in the north. And parking will be provided in the middle. Here's the proposed landscape plan. There's plenty of shrubbery and landscaping provided on the sides. And you also may note that there are these open landscaped areas dispersed throughout that could offer potential placemaking. There will also be proposed shade trees along sidewalks in order to provide shade for pedestrians walking along. Here's the proposed pedestrian and bicycle access plan. As you can see, access will be provided from existing walkways, such as these purple represent existing sidewalks. So effort is made to connect all these to encourage pedestrian use. There is also pedestrian access provided from the existing ballpark lofts to encourage apartment complex residents to visit this area. Here are the proposed building elevations. As you can see, there are a lot of windows throughout the building, and this was so to take advantage of the building's location right next to the water. We thought this would really encourage people who visit this plaza to be able to look outside, and you can also see here there are lots of windows dispersed throughout. As always, notification was posted in the newspaper on the city's website, and property owners within 200 feet were notified via mail. A sign was also posted, and an online form was made available. However, staff is not currently aware of any opposition. So your initial consideration points: this FDP is in alignment with the general land plan, general development plan, and the future land use plan, and a specific use list was created to be tailored toward this development. It is important to note that it is primarily retail, restaurant, and office uses, and no drive-through lanes or outside storage is allowed. Pedestrian walkways, as mentioned before, will connect proposed buildings, existing walkways, and provide access to the neighboring apartment complex. And a minimum of 15% of the FDP area must be allocated to open space. Engineering staff reviewed and cleared comments for the TIA, and some of our engineering staff and a representative from traffic are here to answer any questions you may have. And the PD shall be developed in accordance with all exhibits that were presented. Therefore, staff recommends holding the public hearing before conducting discussion and direction. And also, the applicant is present for any questions. If they could please stand up so the commission can recognize them. Thank you. And staff is open to any questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for anyone like wishes to speak on this item. Anyone? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to the commissioners for, consideration. And any questions, conversations we need to have, work our way down the line. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. Thank you, Brittany.
Whoop. Sorry, if I may just add, for your agenda, just so this item as consideration and action. However, that was an error. This item is just for discussion and direction from the commission tonight. We will bring it back with any guidance and direction that you give us this evening for formal consideration action at a future meeting. So just wanted to clarify that error on your agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question that I have is with regards to the format of the building. So Brittany, just for my clarity, you had indicated, with windows being on the front and that it would face the existing walkways. But yet when I look at this, if I'm reading this correctly, the arcade is looking into the front facing is into the parking lots. Is that correct, or did I have that wrong?
There should be windows facing the lake. So the lake is to the north.
So when we say the arcade, that's the back of the building? I didn't think so. So that's why put up this particular drawing.
Ah, I see.
Right, well, that was my question, though, was around engaging the walkway, because I thought that, this is someplace that people walk and don't think it would be useful to have them seeing the back of the buildings. But if you're saying that it's actually flipped, then that's something different.
No, ma'am. So the front, the arcade, that is the front of the buildings, but then there are windows provided at the rear as well.
So we're just saying the back of the buildings will be all windows, is the plan?
Yes, there are lots of windows on the back, yes.
Backside, okay.
Peter Brosher with the HRA. First, with regard to buildings 2 and 3, which are intended to be restaurants, they would partially have windows on part of the back, what is considered back, usually backside.
Yeah.
As well as on the side facing the open space between the two buildings.
Okay.
So the idea is to draw the open space into the property and hopefully have outdoor dining in that center courtyard area, and then connect it up with the pedestrian walkways, including the one to the loss.
Okay. So really, the only engaging spot between these two buildings is in the middle part here, not at the back of the building. This will just be windows, and any kind of open seating would be between the buildings.
Right, right.
Okay.
There's an asterisk on the one drawing that shows possible outdoor dining areas. But to your original question, the arcade as an architectural feature would just be on the,
That's what
on
I
the-
thought.
along the parking area.
Yeah.
But as far as the windows,
From-
they'll be partly, and to staff's credit, they were the ones to make sure we had windows on what you usually think of as the backside of a retail
Correct.
building.
Okay, thank you. And the only other question I had was around, on the retail uses. And it was just more for clarity because it says that the electronic vapor sales of devices prohibited. What does that mean? When it says electronic vapor sales? That's what I was thinking. Well, that's what I was thinking, is that I thought all vapes were electronic in some way.
There's a prescribed use, I'm on the list of uses for, I think it's vapor stores, is how it's listed. And so we have often tried to specifically address that under the list of uses, either exclude it or not exclude it or clarify it.
It says that vapor stores.
Right, and then, exactly. What, are we just trying to exclude that type of retail totally?
Yes, I mean, we're trying to, you've got in the city's code, tobacco, hookah, and vapor retails are all grouped together as a permitted use. And we're
Okay.
trying to narrow that down further from that whole category.
I guess it's still confusing to me, but why is it even in there then? Yeah,
Was it electronic cigarettes we were trying to?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I believe the intention there in mentioning those specific uses was to make it very explicit that those aren't allowed. But I understand what y'all are saying, that kind
Yeah.
of is a bit contradictory because
Right.
usually not allowed uses wouldn't even be mentioned. So that is definitely something we can possibly change when amending this.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Daywood?
I have a question under Exhibit B, Final Development Plan, item 6C. It says that, well, first that outside retail use, that merchandise may be displayed or stored outside the building on the same premises. Is that something we want to do? We want to allow merchandise to be displayed outside of the retail premises? And then it's, item C says that there shall be no greater than 2,000 square foot of the tenant's space. What does that mean? That in order to display items outside of the building, that particular tenant shall not have more than 2,000 square feet of retail space? Or does it mean that none of the tenants can have more than 2,000 square foot of retail space?
Well, as it says of the tenant building or tenant space, so it's going to go, so it's going to be no greater than 2,000 of the total building. I mean, we're trying to avoid what I call a Home Depot look, where you've got so much stuff outside. And typically we've done that in these PDs is if we have retail uses, allow it, the outdoor display, but try to restrict how much there is or as a part of the total square footage.
Because the plan that was shown does not have an extended sidewalk, and it goes on to say that such merchandise shall not encroach in pedestrian walkway as it shouldn't. So
Right, right.
I'm kind of confused on this, that the language says that they would be allowed to display merchandise, but then it goes on to say it cannot encroach, yet the plans that were shown does not have access approach or sidewalk, if you want to call it.
Well, for example, the pedestrian walkways under the arcades are greater than 5 feet in width. But the pedestrian walkways, per the PD, have a minimum requirement to be 5 feet. So it's not going to encroach within the 5 feet, but if wherever the walkway is greater than 5 feet, that could be an opportunity for the outdoor use. So we don't want the outdoor use taking up the whole sidewalk. And so we always maintain that 5-foot minimum wherever we are on a pedestrian walkway.
Okay, I'm not aware of any retailer in Sugar Land that allows or that has outside merchandise on display. It's just a comment. Under item 7, it goes on to say that the outdoor area, which now you've indicated is between building 2 and 3, can be used for, can be utilized, right? And you have said that it can be
Yes.
utilized for dining.
Yes.
Does that reduce, if it is used for dining, will it reduce it from the 15% required open space?
It depends if it's a hard surface area, that would not be counted toward the 50% open space, because the 50% open space has to be green space as defined in the PD.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything hard surface doesn't go toward the open space credit, if you will, or total.
Okay, so has that been calculated when it was put into this language? If that area is taken up by dining and there's some sort of a pavement or pavers or what have you, then will it reduce it from 15%?
We've looked at it, but a lot of these PDs, the 15%, usually you capture the 50% open space just through your perimeter landscape reserves. And a little bit on top of that. And so we've got some oversized reserves along Stadium Drive. You've got the open space in the southeast corner, and then the buffer is actually behind the buildings as well. So we're easily past the 15% to allow paving for outdoor dining.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Hart?
Sorry. Yeah, just a few questions. And one of them has to do with that open green space behind Building 1. I noticed on the elevation view, you have a lot of rear entrances, or I'm sorry, exits. Is that just going to go out into grass? Are there pads outside of the doors? Are they, is that an emergency exit that they need to go each way and they're going to walk through the grass?
Well, it may be we may have to put a walkway back there, which would put that would not be one we would designate as pedestrian walkway or count toward that. There's already a walkway behind Building 1 from the center. Let's go right here. Let me back a little bit. When the lofts were done, they were required to put a walkway in, split their garages, their one-car garages here, and put a walkway in right here. And then there is a sidewalk or walkway from that point that goes west and intersects Stadium Drive. So you've already got this connection right here. And so we're tying in that to go through a breezeway in the building to get you.
Sure. No, I understand that for
Yeah.
the pedestrian walkway, but there are doors on the back of the building
Right,
for
and
egress.
it could
and
be-
it goes right out into the grass, or
Well,
is
I
there
think
some kind
if we
of
have
city architectural standard that requires the escape routes to be paved, or and that's a question for staff, I guess. I just, it gets all, I don't know. That's my question.
I mean, you may have doors back there, but obviously, all your deliveries are going to be in the front, as well as your customer traffic for building one. So there may be doors back there. There's doors back there, you may have to have pads, concrete pads as well. That type of detail usually doesn't come up until the detailed site planning.
Right, well, the reason I was asking that was that, does that infringe on the green space and the open space requirement? That's
It
where
would
I was
cer- it
going
would-
with all that.
It certainly would take up the open space.
Yeah.
It certainly could, and that'd be part of the calculation you would do to pin down your open space number.
And there's no fence behind, and those are garages there, right? Those are
Right,
the
there is
And
a
there's no
fence.
fences there?
Yeah, there's a fence, but there's a gate in the fence right here. And then the walkway is outside, the walkway is outside the fence.
But
As it
the
hits.
walkway through building one, there's a gate there.
Well, the gate's part of the lofts. So there would not be a gate within the building, just the open breezeway to get you through the building.
So the breezeway goes to a fence that you can't get through to the lofts. Where does the breezeway go?
The breezeway is within the middle of building one. And there is a fence along.
Yeah,
property
that's
line.
right.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It goes to nowhere because nobody can go through the gate.
I'm Jerry Olkey with Johnson Development, and maybe I can, clarity, I'm thinking right along with the commission. The sidewalk exits outside the gate of Imperial Lofts, and the sidewalk follows on the outside of the fence
Oh,
out
okay.
to.
So it's not access to the lofts, it's access out behind and then over to the sidewalk
From
on.
this site that we're here tonight, it's an open breezeway that would get onto what would be a public walkway that goes out to Stadium Drive.
Okay,
So it's not a controlled access point.
I got you. Now I
And
understand.
then to your other question, the back of this particular half of the building, it's my understanding, but I'm not the expert. The fire code requires 3x5 pad or something at an exterior door, and then that if there's a fire, people are running for their lives anyway. There was not a requirement to have full sidewalk from a fire exit all the way to a public walkway. So if for some reason the landscape reserve calculation becomes a concern, it would either limit what is paved between the buildings to offset if we had to have that full sidewalk, but I don't think it's a requirement to have a full sidewalk. But I do agree that I know there's some dimension of a pad. Open the door, you step on concrete, and then you're on your own from there in an emergency situation, so.
Okay, well, I appreciate the clarification, and that's what I was looking at. If we had to have a sidewalk back there, is that going to fit? Thank you very much for the clarification. So on the parking, are we going to have any there's no islands shown. There's usually islands out there. Is there going to be any landscaping on the parking, trees, bushes, shrubs, things of that nature?
There would be in accordance with the requirements of the development code. And so, once again, that's typically a detail that's picked up on the site plan review, but yes, it would be 1 sea of concrete.
Thought I had one more. So I guess. Oh, this trash enclosure, was there an exhibit for that? Did I miss it?
Not a freestanding exhibit, no.
I'm sorry?
Not a separate exhibit, no.
Oh,
Just
was there a-
identification on the site plan.
It just says masonry, so I guess it's just a bricked eye with,
If you look at, I think it's the last section of Exhibit B, which is I, exterior equipment and service areas, you'll see it would be addressed under that item as far as screening and construction materials for that screening. And specifically, you look at IF on page 23 of 32.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the trash enclosure.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have no more.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Good evening, thank you. I'm going to go back to Commissioner Smith's point on talking about the buildings on the north side of the property. I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth because at work, I hate when other people spend my money, but I think we're missing the point here when you've got the stadium to one side and you've got this water feature on the north side and it's nothing but backs of buildings. You know, it's your development, but I think consideration could be given to developing something that looks really nice. They may have patio areas on the backs of those buildings. It's exactly what we're talking about in the land use plan and trying to make and redevelop some of the areas of Sugar Land. We've done exactly the opposite of that. Any thought on that?
Yes, sir, I can. Regarding the north side of these buildings, the property line, the balance of this property is part of the detention pond. And we put gradual slopes on the detention pond to make for the walking space, but technically can't sell it and have them build it because it is part of the detention. So the thought was to put the plazas between the buildings and connect it to the sidewalk where we could embrace it. And as I understand from the staff's concerns, it was opening up windows to the back, but at some point, you've got to have storage, you got to have a kitchen, you got to have things that
Right.
you don't want to see everything that's happening in the back of the house. So
Yeah, and not necessarily on all of them, right? I mean, you could have a restaurant or a bistro in here,
well,
and you've got something that, you know, you're sitting outside and you got the stadium over here and you're looking out over the water at Ducks.
exactly, and we fully get it, but at what point, where do you put the back of the house? I mean, unfortunately, there's got to be a back somewhere, and we didn't want to have it facing Stadium Drive with the plaza
Parking.
going towards the middle to embrace and engage both units possibly. We didn't feel like turning it straight to the parking lot because that's the first impression is the people that are coming to that restaurant are going to see. So I don't know that there's ever, if we could have had one big restaurant that could have been able to do that.
You look at Los Gallitos, for instance, you know, they've got that covered area back there that sits right on the edge of the detention pond.
Correct.
And that might be an opportunity for you.
Correct,
there,
but they're deep in the back of a big commercial area, so
Right.
they didn't have any street frontage to work with, and all of their back of the house was on I guess that would be the south side of that Los Gallitos, I believe, if I'm oriented right at that location. But I know what you're talking about, having that big plaza. But just unfortunately, this doesn't lend it to it where it's at right now.
On the 15% green space requirement, I'm going to guess that that'll be a requirement at the time of development, because it sounds like it's, the intention is for it to be there, but we keep talking about encroachments on it, but there will be a 15% at the end of development that will go in. Okay, good. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Briggs?
Yep, just a quick clarification on the traffic impact analysis. Any concerns, any comments that you want to share on that part? Because there's only 2 access points, right? The Stadium Drive in Silent Manor.
And working with staff on that, if you look at the access point to Stadium Drive, you'll see this jog in it. Because one, we're creating a median break here, and we had to watch the proximity between the existing median break down here and the intersection with Imperial Drive to the north. So we're about halfway between those 2 existing breaks with our proposed entrance coming in. And then you've got what I would call a back entrance off the cul-de-sac or Silent Manor.
Okay, no other concerns though, in general,
No.
I'm assuming?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jason Bond with the city's Public Works Traffic Division. And to answer your question about the traffic impact study, we didn't see any major concerns from the traffic study. Most of the traffic would be entering and exiting from Stadium Drive. And that as Peter mentioned, the one item was the driveway access on Stadium Drive. It needed to meet the city's development code for driveway spacing. That's why it's offset where it is between the roundabout in the stadium and the driveway to the ballpark. And that also Stadium Drive, one of the things we looked at is also a narrow roadway for the land design that for the Imperial area. And that so there was discussions about not having the median opening, but the issue is that some of the southbound traffic would be diverted south through the ballpark driveway. And given that Stadium Drive, the lanes are only 10 feet wide, it's very hard to make U-turn, to make a U-turn movement to go back up to the development. So we didn't want to cause a riskier situation of drivers going down, trying to U-turn at the next median opening when the passenger car cannot fully make the U-turn. Therefore, we decided to keep the median opening, allow the median opening there so that way they can wait for a gap in traffic to make a turn. That was the major item, and that's what I have.
Go ahead. Mr. Chairman, can I have a follow-up question since we've got traffic there?
Absolutely.
Just because
Commissioner
I
Hart.
thought about it. Is there any concern about that exit going through residential community? I mean, I should have seen that before, but it's going right through single-family residential from commercial.
What is this, like, what kind of fencing is that? Yeah. That was my very next.
Well, and
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
I'd like to
Thinking the same.
take the consideration for that one. I mean, that is a residential street, but there's no homes that front to that street other than right there at that cul-de-sac. There's two homes on the end of that cul-de-sac that pick up there. But we have the off-street parking for the folks that would be parking just off the screen. Pardon me, I'll get here. Just off the screen, we have I think there's 4, maybe 5 off-street parking on the lake side, the detention side. So it has a wider field down through there. And there's only one street that connects to it. Forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it goes into the retreat at Imperial. And so it serves just a very small portion of lots. And so it's intended to be secondary access or from those residents that are right there to gain access. But it's not the primary access. Everybody's, expecting that they'll come from Stadium Drive because that's the primary corridor.
What about the trash pickup right there? Is that going to come through that neighborhood?
Well, that's up to the city's trash guys. They got a Google map. I don't know where those guys drive.
Well,
I mean, the
that
intent- the
doesn't need to
intent's
be,
not.
that doesn't need to be directed to you. I mean,
Yeah,
it
that's
could
a
be the
staff-
staff
that's a
question
staff question.
is, now we've got a big garbage truck going past these houses.
Keep in mind, this drive is existing and is an entrance into the ballpark lots. And so you've got that already existing. In fact, the driveway off it
That
exists.
wasn't clear. Oh, yeah. That's right.
We're adjusting to serve this site
Okay,
right here.
That's fair. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
there's the gate right there. I didn't see that either.
Yeah, and I see the garbage now for the other place. That's fair. Thank you.
The only other thing I had was on building 1. It's shown, obviously, it has the walkway in the middle, but that's intended for one 15,000 square foot use. That's one building, one use there, right? Even though it's kind of split up.
You've got one building with the breezeway going through the middle of it, and we call it one building with the breezeway going through it. So it's probably, we expect to have a common roof
Okay.
over it. And so you'd have, but it's expected to be a multi-tenant building.
Okay. Just wanted that confirmation. That's all I had.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Lundin.
So I have a question that a commissioner that's been on this commission for some time probably shouldn't ask, but so there was reference to site plan earlier. Brittany, can you confirm, does the site plan come through us? Can you just refresh my memory about the there was reference to site plan review where, parking, medians and all that stuff. Can you just remind me, will we see a site plan, or is that between city staff and developer?
No, sir. However, these will ultimately, what you see in front will be codified eventually.
So what, the reference to the site plan earlier is what exactly are we referring to there?
So it would still have to adhere to the site layout plan that would go in front of P&Z and eventually City Council. However, what you're seeing now just would not be as fleshed out as what city staff would review.
Okay, so the fleshed out version comes back to us, or is between staff and developer once this particular piece is
City staff would review the more fleshed out, more technical version.
okay. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that. I do think that it presents some issues with the, I'll use the parking as an example. If there's all of a sudden going to be, islands in the middle of this parking area that impacts circulation, then I think that needs to come before the commission for us to have some ability to comment on. And so that's just one example. I don't know what other pieces may be absent from what we're reviewing here tonight, but.
Yeah, the site plan would have review by full traffic and engineering staff. So they would get into on-site queuing. But yeah, we don't typically, and you guys have not seen in probably a couple years, very detailed site plan PDs where the parking is shown, the specific spaces, that just that level of detail.
So Lauren, I mean, I'm using parking as a
sure.
proxy.
Sure.
What I mean, are there things that we should be considering that will be on an ultimate site plan that
No, I mean, the open space was a good discussion and understanding how we calculate that and how some of these things impact that. The discussion on the ped access through the building, that was something that staff worked very closely with the applicant on. When this came forward, it was one solid building. And as we do, review things against our codes and plans, we took a look at the land use plan and the mobility master plan. It talks about connecting sites. And so the overall goal when we site planned and went through the PD process on the ballpark lofts was to have connection from the ballpark lofts into this commercial area. So this is carrying out a lot of the things that we reviewed as staff with the applicant, and the commission, looks at too, the land use plan, our master plans and stuff. So we did go through that exercise as staff before bringing it to you, but it is why we brought it up and
Sure.
kind of talked about it to Commissioner Hart's point.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, perhaps an overall point is, I'm thinking back to the sort of optionality that we had on that last one that we did, that is really, in my view, puts us in a position of, I don't like being put in that position, that's my personal opinion, of having so many different options and variations, and I realized that it was kind of charted out, but I think that we as a commission should what I would prefer is that we approve what's going to actually be codified is my only point there. So, and quite frankly, I want that to be what comes before us I think is in the best interest of the applicant, so that we're not delaying further process by, something that comes back before us 2 weeks from now or whatever that somehow is kind of throws us a curveball. So that explains the site plan. I'm perfectly comfortable with all of the technical details of that nature being put. I just want to be sure we were on the same page related to our role with the site plan versus our role with what we're considering and discussing this evening. So,
Sure.
so that's helpful.
Can I have one comment? Because I'm gonna say that I think that as part of the landscape plan, if there's landscaping in the medians in the parking lot, that should be presented to us. Whether it has the parking lot spaces designated, I know that we've seen landscaping in the middle of the parking lot presented to the board before, or the commission before.
You
And-
have, I mean, it's, yeah, and that's kind of a standard development code requirement. So that's why the PDs at the beginning will defer, it'll have that if it's BO district or B2 district. If it's not in here, it will default to that. That's why that language is in there. But the landscape islands in a parking lot are standard code requirements. So we don't bring them forward in a planned development district necessarily, because they are just standard code requirements.
So they're not under E of the PD.
Look at it.
So that was removed from our purview because it's covered in the code, so we don't encumber the applicant on additional, I mean, why don't, what I'm asking is, we
I
used to
think
see
there's
it, we
no
don't see it
sta-
anymore, how
Yeah,
come?
there's no cookie cutter way of us telling an applicant how they submit. This is what was submitted to us. We felt since the landscape islands are addressed in the development code, there was no need to bring it forward. There was nothing going above and beyond the development code that we needed commission feedback on. It's a standard code requirement, so we will review it at site plan.
Thank you.
Another remedial commission question. Help me understand parking setback that doesn't really come close to the parking area. I'm thinking about this area down here on the bottom left, 25-foot parking setback.
Right, that's right on the edge of the parking.
Well, so I guess what is that? What is that saying? It's 25 feet away from any parking spot?
It means that the paving for the parking area is 25 feet from the property line. Has to be set back at least 25 feet from the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Told you it was remedial. Peter, just a couple questions. One, what, if anything, do we need to know about this storm and drainage easement that is depicted there between buildings 2 and 3?
Man, and I almost didn't come tonight. That was done by LJA, our engineers, before we knew, when it was raw land and we did these detention ponds, we stubbed out storm sewer because all of our outfalls are submerged below lake level, so we didn't have to look at all the slope paving. We wanted to keep as much green above the water. So we took a stab and said, put it here. We've told the applicant, we're more than capable. They can go in and do an inflatable plug, move that, whatever they need to do. The mud district, as well as Johnson as the developer, will work with them to change easements as needed. We never know where the buildings are going or what they're going to do. So we just wanted to try to prevent having every single commercial buyer to have to drain a lake, to poke a piece of pipe out, and just cause all that uproar within the community. So it's shown there because it's existing. As we get approvals and they start getting the construction plans, whatever they end up doing.
You'll redirect is essentially the...
The pipe goes straight out into the lake somewhere from that spot. So, but it could be moved out more to get away from the plaza, whatever they want to do. We'll work with them on their construction details. But it was just our best guess, make sure that site had drainage.
Got it. And then on the trash, servicing all 3 buildings, I guess that's adequate for a single dumpster to serve all 3.
It is, but it could easily be, bigger than what we're actually showing in the site plan here. The space could be bigger once you determine your specific uses.
Okay.
So we don't have that dimension on the exhibits, but we want to make sure we have it located.
So fair to say that for our consideration and discussion, that there's a single trash enclosure envisioned for that
Right.
site.
To serve the entire site. And then part of it goes back to what's the frequency of pickup
Sure.
for that, based on its the demand for that
Yeah.
enclosure.
Okay, and then following up on AP's question about the subdivision, will those details be demonstrated, articulated when this comes back to us, or do we know how the subdivision is going to occur already? I'm looking at building 1 and building 1A.
So for clarity, you're looking to what's going to divide up that however many square foot, 15,000 square foot, where the dividing lines will be?
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, so let me go there and just have you answer that.
At this point, I know that they're working with some LOIs, but they don't have defined tenants yet.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, somebody needs 2,600, somebody needs 2,800. Those interior walls are meant to be able to be adjusted to the tenant needs, so.
Sure.
I
But the
don't think
footplate stays the same.
the building footprint, which is what everybody's going to see from the outside, the
Yeah.
internal walls is
And,
just.
and the breezeway is fixed too. It has to line up with the exit from the lofts.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's a fixed point as well.
Yeah, yeah. And is there, so that's good. You answered my question. So the last thing is probably actually doesn't fall within you guys, but the point there across Stadium Drive at the far southwest corner of this depiction here. The city, I would hope it would think through some sort of very pronounced pedestrian crossing mechanism to allow for traffic between ballpark, foot traffic that is, between ballpark and this particular development. And I ask because people fly down that coming off the overpass there. You know, you're without even trying, you're doing 50 if you're not careful. So I'm thinking about either traffic easing like we have out here, at City Hall or something, but I mean, that's not for you guys.
But I can address that because in the very beginning, the major pedestrian crossings are at the controlled intersection, the roundabout. The intent is you don't want mid-block crossing, so there's very limited mid-block crossing. Now, you're going to get the ones that scamper across. You can't stop them.
Yeah.
But the intent was not to promote a mid-block crossing by putting handicap, ADA access ramps and putting a sidewalk mid-block because of exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
So yes, it would be very convenient, but the only way to safely do that is you've got to put stop signs, traffic control devices, something.
Yeah.
So the intent is you get to enjoy the beauty of walking up to the roundabout, come back down, you got the lake on the west side, you get your fit steps in.
Jerry, I need to trade places with you, man. You live the good life. Yeah, I mean, again, this doesn't impact anything development-wise, but from the city standpoint, that is a main entry point to the ballpark. You're going to have people that are parking there, and the scampering, as you suggest, will happen, but it'll happen in herds, and it's going to create issues. So
but the other thing, to your point, on game days, there's generally staff.
So great, you're
at those
right,
points,
yeah.
which help facilitate game day traffic, but just everyday traffic.
Yeah.
It's not being promoted with ADA crosswalks.
No, that's actually a really, really good point, because I actually cone that off and all that. And I don't know who makes those decisions on behalf of the ballpark operations on where cones go and all that. But again, not for our consideration tonight because it's not a part of the development, but just highly encourage the city to think through the implications of all of that. and I'll close by saying that I think this is a relatively small parcel of land, and the fact that you guys have found vertical developers to put something there to serve the neighborhood, I think should be applauded. So with that, I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Commissioner Landine. I only have a couple of questions left because they've been covered. My primary one, and I suspect this is a non-item, but I want to ask it. I realize there are only two residents on Silent Manor right there, and it looks to be a pretty significant fence between them. But do the requirements of single-family adjoining commercial, are they satisfied here? Our buffering requirements that we work to put in place?
So when we did the retreat at Imperial 4 or 5 years ago now, I think, we were here, that is an 8-foot tall brick fence, that fence that you said, and that's the requirement between residential and commercial spots. There's also
Trees.
35, 40-foot buffer, that green belt,
Right.
what that does is that takes people with a green belt has the potential to go down to, there's a plaza on Oyster Creek, part of our trail system. We did not put a sidewalk physically here because we wanted people to come down the residential street that's just off the screen there.
Right.
And walk down the residential sidewalk, and then that's when we connected back. But it's that additional buffer adjacent to the commercial that we provided for there.
Okay. So staff satisfied that we've got that covered? Okay. Okay. Yeah, and really, I had some questions about the sidewalks and the breezeway and so forth, but again, they were all covered. So I appreciate everyone's, informing us about this, and we can move on to the next item. Thank you. Let me get back to my agenda. We're at item 5A, Planning and Zoning Liaison Reports for the meetings on 6/28, 7/5, and 7/19.
That would be me. I lucked out and had relatively easy duty. And the only thing of relevance was on the July 19th meeting, the council approved on the consent agenda that rezoning that we did near Live Oak Grill.
The detention pond and all that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Item 5B, staff report.
We don't have much. Next meeting would be August 9th. There's a possibility we might cancel that. We don't have a lot of items queuing up for that one. We do for the second meeting likely in August though. So stay tuned. We'll let you guys know.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Adjourn. Do I have a motion?
Oh, sorry.
Hey, I'm new at this. I'm going to get it right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We're adjourned. Thank y'all.
I thought you were calling.